In the year 480 BC, history held its breath. The fate of an entire civilization, of democracy, philosophy, and the very idea of freedom hung in the balance. It would be decided not by kings in their palaces, nor by politicians in their forums, but by the courage of just 300 men. They stood in a narrow mountain pass, a sliver of land between towering cliffs, and a raging sea. Before them, an empire of millions stretching to the horizon. This was Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, and this was the last stand of the Spartans. Before the battle, the world of the Greeks was a fractured mosaic of ambition and pride. City fought city, Athens against Sparta, Thebes against Corinth. A land of brilliant minds and fierce warriors, yet divided, their rivalries overshadowing the coming storm. But far to the east, a giant had awakened. The Persian Empire, a juggernaut of conquest, expanded its dominion like a blood-red tide washing over the known world. Messengers of the great king Xerxes delivered a simple demand to the Greek city-states: earth and water, the ancient symbols of submission. Some cities bowed, their leaders choosing servitude over annihilation. Others trembled, paralyzed by the sheer scale of the approaching army. But in the stark, disciplined land of Laconia, the Spartans gave their answer. They threw the messengers into a well, telling them to find their earth and water there. Sparta would not kneel. To understand this defiance, one must understand Sparta. It was not just a city, it was a machine of war. A society forged in the crucible of discipline and the complete absence of fear. From the age of 7, every Spartan boy was taken from his family and entered the brutal agage. They were taught to endure pain, hunger, and hardship. They learned to fight, to kill, and to die for Sparta. Every man was a soldier, his life dedicated to the shield wall, the phalanx. And their king was Leonidas. He was not born to the throne but earned it through duty and strength. He was the embodiment of the Spartan code. When the elders and the oracles warned against war, citing religious festivals and omens, Leonidas knew that destiny could not be postponed. He chose his 300 men, not for their youth or strength, but because each one had a living son to carry on his name. He was marching to his death, and he knew it. When Xerxes demanded Sparta lay down its arms, Leonidas gave a reply that would echo through eternity: come and get them. Across the Aegean, Xerxes, the king of kings, commanded an empire that spanned 3 continents. His power was absolute, his wealth measurable. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers from every corner of his vast domain marched under his banner, the largest invasion force the ancient world had ever seen. The Immortals, his personal guard of 10,000 elite warriors. Cavalry from the plains of Asia. War elephants that shook the ground. To cross the Hellespont Strait, his engineers built a bridge of boats, a mile long, a testament to an empire that could bend nature itself to its will. Xerxes did not just intend to conquer Greece, he intended to erase it. The Greek commanders knew that to face this colossal army on an open plain would be suicide. Their only hope lay in geography. They needed a choke point, a place where Persia's overwhelming numbers would count for nothing. They found it at Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, a narrow coastal pass where the mountains met the sea. Here, the path was so constricted that only a few men could fight abreast. It was a death trap, a natural fortress. Here, Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, alongside a few thousand Greek allies, would make their stand. They were not there to win. They were there to buy time to bleed the Persian army, and to show the world that even a god king could be defied. For 3 days, the battle raged. Wave after wave of Persian infantry charged into the narrow pass, only to be met by a wall of bronze and iron. The Spartans fought in the phalanx, an interlocking formation of shields and spears. It was a living, breathing fortress of men trained from birth for this exact moment. The Persian soldiers, funneled into the bottleneck, were crushed, their numbers turning from an advantage into a chaotic, suffocating liability. The ground became slick with blood, the air thick with the screams of the dying and the clash of steel. The Spartans held firm, a rock against which the Persian tide broke again and again. Frustrated and enraged by his losses, Xerxes unleashed his finest weapon, the 10,000 Immortals. They were the best soldiers in the empire, clad in magnificent armor, their faces hidden behind intimidating masks. They advanced with perfect discipline, expecting to sweep the exhausted Greeks aside. But in the claustrophobic confines of the pass, their skill was neutralized. The Spartans, with their longer spears and superior bronze armor, met them head-on. The Immortals, who had never known defeat, were repulsed, their reputation shattered against the unyielding Spartan line. The god king watched from his throne on a nearby hill, leaping to his feet in fury as even his elite guard failed to break the will of the 300. As night fell over the blood-soaked pass, a quiet resolve settled over the Greek camp. The Spartans tended to their wounds, sharpened their blades, and repaired their battered shields. There was no talk of retreat. There were no illusions of survival. They were Spartans. They had sworn an oath to defend Greece, or die trying. To flee was the ultimate dishonor, a fate worse than death. That night, under a canopy of stars, Leonidas walked among his men, a king sharing the final hours with his brothers in arms. They were all that stood between the Persian horde and the heart of Greece. They were doomed, but they were free. But their doom would not come from the front. It would come from the shadows, carried by a whisper of betrayal. A local man named Ephialtes, hoping for a rich reward from Xerxes, revealed the existence of a hidden mountain path that bypassed the Hot Gates. Under the cover of darkness, a detachment of Persian troops, led by the traitor, began their ascent. By dawn, they would be behind the Greek lines. The trap was closing. The Spartans were surrounded. As the first light of dawn revealed the Persian forces on the cliffs behind them, Leonidas knew the end had come. He dismissed the other Greek allies, urging them to retreat and fight another day. He would keep only his 300 Spartans, the Thespians who refused to leave, and the Thebans held as hostages. Their final duty was clear. They would not surrender. They would not retreat. They would make a last stand that would be remembered for all time. They abandoned the narrow pass and moved to a small hill, forming a circle around their king. Hemmed in from all sides, they fought with a fury born of desperation and defiance. When their spears shattered, they drew their short swords. When their swords broke, they fought with their bare hands and teeth. They were a cornered lion, surrounded by hunters, fighting until their last breath. Leonidas, fighting at the forefront, was struck down by a storm of arrows. A ferocious battle erupted over his body, as his warriors fought and died to protect their fallen king. In the end, they were overwhelmed. Not one Spartan retreated. Not one surrendered. They fell where they stood, buried under a mountain of Persian arrows. Their final act a testament to their unbreakable spirit. Thermopylae was a military defeat, but it was a strategic and moral victory that changed the course of history. The sacrifice of the 300 was not in vain. They bought the Greek city-states the precious time they needed to mobilize their navies and armies. Inspired by the heroism of the Spartans, a divided Greece finally united against the common enemy. 1 year later, at the naval battle of Salamis and the land battle of Plataea, the unified Greek forces crushed the Persian invasion, driving Xerxes' empire back to Asia forever. The stand of the 300 did not just save Greece. It preserved the cradle of Western civilization. Empires rise and fall. Armies turn to dust. But courage is eternal. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more stories of ancient battles and legendary empires.